You want to know a good way to have a fucking heart attack right before you go to bed?
Watch scary movies.
Aside from take the boom boom, the thing that we can't say, you know.
I see what you did there. Yeah, don't want to
can't say the thing, but you guys all got again. It. We're two wild, crazy guys. No, hold down the lock button on your Samsung phone for longer than 2 goddamn seconds. Then it goes, we're going to call the SOS right now. We're sending the military National Guard. Like, I was a little slow on the uptake. I was about to sleep.
You know what most of our listeners...
flashing red.
You know what most of our listeners and viewers are going to say about that, right?
What's that?
You shouldn't be a scumbag Samsung user. You should join the Apple cult. That's what they're going to say. So.
It outperforms everything that an Apple iPhone does.
Okay, David, listen.
And then guess what?
What did I just say?
We also haven't been found out. I'm sure it will come to light sometime that there's millions of not African Americans, just straight Africans working in cobalt mines with their babies strapped to their back, getting cobalt poisoning so they can make chips.
Last time I checked, lithium is also in Samsung, so we're not exactly innocent.
Nah, they haven't taken a picture of our farm yet, so we still got a little bit. Hey,
what did I tell you, David?
We don't have window nets at Samsung.
Listen,
all right,
they're in a cult, so all of the logic and reasons that you give them it's going to be falling on deaf ears.
But you have a green square on my phone and not a blue one.
Listen, I have lost friendships. I have lost friendships over that. As a matter of fact, I actually lost, not that this is much of a loss, I think it was more of a gain for me. I lost a connection, a match on a dating site over green bubbles, for real. Like we were texting like on the site itself, and then when we transferred off to our phones, and she saw I had a green bubble, she's like, I don't know if I can do this. Your bubble's green. That's a true story.
You used to select for genetic reproductivity.
What did I say?
Off of strength, protection, and now it's green bubbles on a text message.
But you know what hurts more than that?
What's that, Dane?
All my friends saying that I ruin the group chat because since one person has a green bubble, it messes all their bubbles up. And I'm sorry, friends, for that.
Sorry to burst your bubble, you fucking quiz.
You can't say that word, David.
I say quay. What's wrong with that?
It's like a Boston way of saying it.
Don't give away my tricks and secrets. Jesus.
Anyway, too much.
You also tell him I'm anti-Semitic as well. Blonde hair, blue
David,
eyes checks out.
God knows we get canceled for plenty of other stuff.
Crime in Italy. Is that how you say that?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right.
Anyway,
enough sidebar. To the main topics. All right. The meme destruction this week is that COVID ruined takeout. It's not wrong.
It did.
Culture Corner. Novak Djokovic makes Bill Gates look like a joker. Bitch.
It's nice. That's not on the nose at all. That's a high quality joke. Delivery was top notch as well. Nice work.
All right, I got the guns.
Should take this show on the
road.
Should
I put the guns? Should I put the guns? Oh, sorry.
You got the guns.
Sorry, I got him out a little early. We'll tighten her up on the back end. Epstein didn't kill himself. A friend of the podcast makes a fox pause. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, I think that's
we're in America, so we are.
It's like fragile. Must be Italian.
It's definitely Italian. All right, and then the main topic is Mr. Saint or Antichrist? You decide. Oh, you want to try it again? You decide. Oh, that was great.
That was clean.
All right, take the second one, guys. Cut that first one out. That was a piece of shit. Anyway, you ready to jump in, Dane?
Let's do it. Welcome to Weapons and Meme Destruction Podcast, episode 132, which can be found at wmdpodcast.com/132. You can find the podcast audio only on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons and Meme Destruction. We don't have to censor over there because thankfully the podcast apps let us talk uncensored still so far. You can find the video on YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey. YouTube is the one that we do have to censor. We might have to censor. I don't know yet. We'll see how the conversation goes. The Culture Corner segment, because we were talking about the no-no topic, but I don't think we're making any claims that would get us banned. But if you are watching this on YouTube and you see that part get blanked out, always go over to Rumble or Odyssey. You can see the uncensored video over there. But please follow us on all three platforms. That way you can always get the uncensored videos whenever we have to, self-moderate to not get kicked off of YouTube. You can also link up with us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, members-only page on Facebook. Find out how to get there by going over to the website, wdpodcast.com. Click the Support Our Work tab, and you'll see how to get in the members-only Facebook page. You can also link up with us on Tribal, which is the leftist echo chamber. That nameless, faceless video guy is hell-bent on keeping us a presence over there and not getting kicked off. And also the Facebook Rival Float. We are also over there. So link up with us everywhere you see us, but no matter what, number one place to join us, wndpodcast.com. Click that email list on the homepage. Join that because that is something they'll never take away. With that being said, we have, before we get into the meme to destroy for this week, we have a brief hurrah celebratory thing. We won an appeal this week. We were banned last week for apparently challenging the results of the election that shall not be mentioned.
Trump getting elected?
When that's not at all what we did. We basically said what the two sides claimed about the 2020 election, and YouTube took that at liberty for themselves to ban that episode. And Nameless Faceless Video Guy did a fantastic job challenging that. And surprisingly, within a few hours, YouTube reversed the banning of episode 131, and so that's why you're able to see it on YouTube. But
super fun.
Yeah, that just lets you know how precarious we are over there. So
super fun to do that every.
That's our first ban for a topic other than the topic we're not supposed to talk about. But we're apparently on the algorithm's radar, and they are not too much keen on us. So
they the topics we can't talk about are ever growing and ever evolving, it seems like, over here. So,
or maybe it's our faces. I don't know. It's probably that. That is Occam's razor answer to this thing.
I mean, I do have a pretty shitty haircut.
Yeah.
And your glasses are crooked.
Fuck. I would keep them straighter when I was active on TikTok, and I had the comment section always reminding me at how crooked they were. But since I quit doing that because we got about 18 TikTok pages banned, I'm not as self-aware as I used to be.
It's okay. We'll tighten up eventually.
All right.
Or we'll just get canceled, and then we'll just be over there on Rumble and Tribal.
It is what it is.
So whatever.
So anyway, into the meme destroying segment of today's show, we have a tweet from who knows? I didn't even click on this person's Twitter account to see if they have more than like 6 followers. But the reason why we're pulling this out is this tweet. Well, I guess they must have more than 6 because this tweet that I'm about ready to read for you got 4,568 retweets. It got 1,203 quote tweets, and it got 65,000 likes. So regardless of how big this particular Twitter account is, this sentiment is apparently shared by a lot of people, and it is one that needs to be destroyed roundly.
Post haste.
If you remember a couple weeks ago, David and I talked about how important it is for the lefties would love this, the right side of history to get right what we all lived through with COVID. Because if we let the regime mouthpieces and people like the dipshit that run this Twitter account, if we let them control the narrative on what we just lived through, they're going to make it sound like it was all, rainbows and unicorns for the last couple of years. So anyway, here is the tweet. And it is by, like I said, Awato Allen. The Twitter account is @JavaJiga. So, yeah, awfully close to getting canceled there.
Whoa.
Quote, I like when Americans pretend that we had a lockdown and it wasn't just you couldn't get takeout for 3 months. Well, that's one way to categorize the last couple years if you're completely a disingenuous prick.
And weren't affected nearly at all by the fact that people told you to stay at home. Excuse me, that you're a non-essential worker. That business that you had handed down to your son and to your son's son and to this whole thing that was the lifeblood of your family's operating within this society, being able to afford and live and grow and nourish yourselves. If that was taken away from you because of government mandates, you might have a different viewpoint than this young man or woman or they, them, or furry, or whatever their pronoun of choice might be nowadays, who made this meme. It's very disingenuous. It doesn't seem like you are on your moral high ground, which I know you love to be on. And I'd suggest you take a quick look at thine own ass first before you start espousing any kind of disparity upon other people that may have viewed the lockdown slightly differently than you.
Yeah, that lockdown, which was apparently nothing more than getting takeout for 3 months, resulted in, I guess, a few just minor inconveniences like, old people, some of which who had dementia didn't quite understand what was going on, were left crying and lonely because their family was no longer visiting. Some of them thinking, well, maybe my family doesn't love me anymore. And some of them completely aware that their family was being kept away. I guess that was just, synonymous with takeout not being allowed. Or what about the people who were sick with COVID in the hospital and had to die without their family there to comfort them? Or what about there's just a lot more things than that. David, go ahead.
I got another one. How about all the people that avoided their doctor's visits because you weren't allowed to go there, without a COVID check or unless it was an emergency, and then come to find out they had cancer and hadn't been treating it for 2 years because they didn't get a checkup, or they had a heart disease, or they had a completely preventable disease that would have been notified if they had gone to their regular checkup, but they couldn't because of a lockdown. But at least they had PIY.
Or how about, according to the International Monetary Fund, billions of people falling back into global poverty because of all the supply chain disruption? Or what about the inflation that we're currently experiencing? At least one piece to that puzzle was the massive supply chain disruption, which still hasn't been fixed because of their lockdowns.
But yes.
It was all just a simple matter of you couldn't get your Grubhub in a timely fashion, according to Watto Allen. And the rest of that stuff never happened. No inconveniences at all. And the regime apparatchiks who forced it on us, and people like this individual and everybody in the mainstream media who said, it's not that bad. What are you complaining about? Or you're mad about your freedom, right? Remember that when you complained about your freedom for the last couple of years, you were dumb for bitching about it. See, this is why these people cannot have narrative control. Because you let them get away with this shit, and the 65,000 mental marginals that like this tweet, you let them tell the rest of their kids and their kids' kids, you let them tell posterity that that's the way that COVID went, and the next time it's going to be worse. So take narrative control away and destroy memes like this every time you see them.
Well, like you said, it's just when you try to boil it down into one thing, it definitely cuts to the heartstrings of those that didn't have such an easy lockdown. And then, by the way, lest we forget, seeing as he brought it up, what was the average amount of weight that each American gained during the lockdown? I think it was like something like 3 pounds per month was the average. So what you're telling me is that not only did we lock down, but we became more unhealthy and more susceptible to the thing that we were locking down to stop and prevent. Interesting. So it seems like the lockdown shouldn't have happened in the first place, and it seems like you trying to justify it makes you look like, I don't know, a fucking asshole.
To put it politely.
Anyway.
On to the Culture Corner segment. We're talking about Novak's Djokovic.
Oh,
you like where I did that?
Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
We had a whole whiteboard full of it.
Now, listen.
Excuse me. An African American board? Do we have an African American board that we wrote it down?
Listen, I'm still on the fence of me just even saying that little joke about his name as possibly having to blank out this segment on YouTube, which apparently if we have to do it and you're on YouTube, you don't even know that I'm saying this right now.
Come on, you guys don't have a sense of humor. Fuck you.
But I'm not making any claims. I'm saying what we all know is the case, is that he didn't get it.
We are on all those things that you rattle off each and every week. Like, all of them. I don't know your spiel. It's Spotify and the other ones. Literally, YouTube is the only one that ever has a problem with anything that we say, ever. Yeah. And they seem to have a problem pretty often with what we say, too.
Big time.
So
anyway, Djokovic, who, for those of you who don't know, I'm sure the vast majority of you do, is a superbly talented men's tennis player. He was winning championships long before the COVID times came upon us. But he happened to be one of those rare superstar athletes at his sport that refused and openly refused and laid out his reasons for why he refused to get the vaccine, despite the fact that all of the establishment opinion molders were all in lockstep saying that it was good for him and there was no risk and he probably wanted to kill his grandma and yada, yada, yada. And actually, it resulted in him losing an opportunity to add another another tennis major championship to his illustrious career, because he was not allowed to travel to Australia and participate in the Australian Open last year. But as sanity has kind of started to trickle back into society, he was allowed to participate in this year's Australian Open, and lo and behold, he won. But he didn't just win and therefore be the champion of bodily autonomy that he's been for this entire time alone. He did it oh so gloriously with Bill Gates himself in attendance. It was a beautiful thing to behold.
Well, for a little backstory, Bill Gates has been pushing vaccines since
all stripes.
Since before, obviously, COVID-19 and their vaccines too. He's been saying that we needed to get vaccines into everyone's arm around the world. And his Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has been seeing to that as much as possible. So to say he's pro-vax would be to put it mildly. And to say that he was pro, can I say that? COVID-19 vaccine would be also putting it mildly. He was a big proponent of this vaccine. So to see that somebody that refused, I guess it was like a little, what are you calling it? A symbolic middle finger?
Yeah.
To Bill Gates and the crowd.
Yeah, this is one of those rare instances because, again, longtime listeners and viewers will know that most of the time our Culture Corner segment is aimed at, pointing out the way that the culture is trying to be subverted for all kinds of nefarious reasons, to get us to stay divided, to find ways to screw us over, to do all kinds of society and individual and cultural destroying things. This is one of those opposite examples where this is a really important symbolic gesture of the juxtaposition between the guy who maintained his bodily autonomy and was adamant about it up to and including, right? Because he's a competitive athlete. And at that level, no matter what your sport is, you don't want to be forced to sit out a potential major championship when you're perfectly healthy to be able to do it. And he stood by his principles and said, all right, it's kind of fucked up that you're not going to let me participate in the Australian Open, even though I'm healthy and ready to ride. And I'm one of the best in the game currently. But he stood by his principles and he sat out of last year's Australian Open. But then to come back in his first time at the Australian Open since being forced out and to win it in front of Bill Gates is a massive win for the global culture of human freedom, bodily autonomy, self-ownership, those important principles that we talk about on the podcast all the time. So good for Novak, good for, screw Bill Gates, but good for all of humanity to be able to witness that and hopefully take that symbolism to heart and, have some courage of your convictions to, emulate Novak a little bit more in other areas of your life, not just within the context of COVID.
And even though I don't watch golf, it's a great thing that he stood up and won this tournament in front of everyone in the world.
See, David just cannot help but sarcastically poo-poo a great man winning his sport.
Huh?
It's tennis, David. It's tennis.
Really? Interesting. All right. Good job winning your ping pong match on clay. So, Dane, on to Epstein and him not killing himself this week.
Today's Epstein, and I'm just going to
with a heavy heart, by the way, I move on. I don't know about
not from me.
Ponyak over here.
So here's the thing, and I'm just going to get the Epstein out of the way because we're going to dedicate, obviously, the chunk to this segment because this segment could really be an entire episode by itself. The Epstein here is the sort of Pied Piper mentality of somebody who becomes a cultural phenomenon in one way or another, but through either having really poorly informed opinions himself or being instructed from others to, advance certain talking points and agendas. This is common in terms of the regime getting what it wants. Now, when I tell you who this individual is, you're going to be like, Dane, what are you talking about? This guy is stands opposite the regime on everything. And to that, I say, yes, he does. But the position that he's taking here, which we are going to take him to task for, maybe I a little bit more abrasively than David would care to join me in, is this is literally the worst thing that the regime does. And not just the regime, this is the worst thing that human beings do to each other. And he is advancing that cause and using his celebrity and his platform to do it. So that's problematic.
The lead's 6 feet under right now.
Yeah.
Do you want to keep shoveling on it or you want to just get to the main?
Let's get to the main.
Brother Maynard.
Jordan Peterson.
Oh, good boy.
Now, I am not a hanger-on of everything Jordan Peterson says, so I can't sit here and say that he's never said something.
Nor should you be to anybody ever.
That he's never, except for us. You should hang on to every word we say because we're awesome.
Even us.
But so I'm sure that Jordan Peterson, in his many, many public appearances and books and et cetera, I'm sure he said things in other contexts and other subject matters that I also disagree with. But since, again, I don't know everything he said about everything, I don't know what those are. So for me personally, when I heard what we're getting ready to talk about, this is the first time where he said something that I disagreed with. And not only did I disagree with it, I disagreed with it vehemently because we have told you time and time again on this podcast, I think this is true for both of us, that anti-war is probably the number one issue for us out of everything. It is for me. I don't know. I'm going to let David, second that if it's true. But war is, again, I'm mincing no words about this. It is the worst thing that human beings do to each other on a massive scale. And so to champion war in any respect is abhorrent to me. There is no moral virtue in it. And yet Jordan Peterson is going to make his level best effort to show you that there is.
I'll second the opinion, but that's only because I can't think of something funny to say right now. That's the only reason I'm seconding it. But no, war is the worst thing that you can do to any other human being, and because of the simple fact that there's no such thing as a just war. There's always going to be innocence involved. There's always going to be misrepresentation. There's always going to be dehumanization. So to say that violence is never the answer when you're in civil society, but violence always seems to be the answer when it comes to global affairs, and not just violence where I punch you in the face and you don't feel good about yourself. Violence where I blow your whole fucking family up and turn you against me for the rest of your life, and radicalize you, or vice versa. I get blown up, or worst case scenario, haven't seen it happen yet, but we've been knocking on the doorstep for the past at least year, maybe year and a half in Ukraine of a nuclear holocaust. We literally can blow the whole fucking planet up if we
many times over.
If we pick the wrong fight. So again, I feel like if we just used our words a little more often, and if we can't figure it out then maybe it's not worth figuring it out. I don't ever see a reason why there is a reason to go to war. Does that make sense? A reason for a reason? Sounds stupid, but...
So as we usually do when we are going to go in on somebody, we want to let them speak their mind in their own words before we respond to it. So here's a 28-second clip. This is a clip from Jordan Peterson's podcast that was shared by another Twitter user, Michael Tracy. And like I said, 28 seconds, but this is what Jordan has to say about what he thinks the West should do with respect to the regime in Iran.
If any of you have been particularly taken by this story today, you could always put pen to paper and write your congressman or your senator and let them know that you're not all that happy about the situation in Iran, and that if the politicians got their act together and were stalwart in their opposition to this fundamentalist, totalitarian, misogynistic, brutal regime, that maybe it could be pushed over, and that would be a nice object lesson to totalitarian tyrants everywhere in the world.
Maybe it could be pushed over. Now, that sounds an awful lot like toppling a regime or regime change or, that shit that the United States has been doing since at least the 1950s with in this very same country, deposing Mohammad Mossadegh in Iran, which then led to the Shah, which was a brutal dictator supported by the Americans, a sock puppet dictator, which brutalized the people of Iran so much so that in the 1970s, the Ayatollah came to power in the Iranian Revolution, and then we had the Iranian hostage crisis, et cetera, and all of the frosty relations that have existed between Iran and the West has all stemmed from that first original regime change. And Jordan Peterson has apparently learned none of this history and is just content to, I guess, imbibe the regime's line of logic on this, or line of illogic, depending on how you look at it. And that, well, if you just screw up, just try again. And no matter how many times the United States has toppled a regime, which has led to, in things like Libya, a literal open-air slave trade, literally setting the country of Libya back 400 years, if you're talking about slavery now being legalized and open in public, or, something like Yemen, where it's still the largest ongoing humanitarian crisis in the world. And by the way, that humanitarian crisis is man-made with American support and logistics, or, what they did to the countries of Iraq and Afghanistan for the past 20 years. Everywhere you turn, the U.S. foreign policy establishment consensus has always done the same thing over and over and over again. Waste American blood and treasure for the profits of the military-industrial complex in the United States and in the broader West. And nothing ever changes in the countries other than more death and destruction, more starvation as a result of sanctions and other things, more death and destruction for the people that live in those countries that find themselves the unfortunate targets of the West. That I want to focus crystal clear on. That is what Peterson's calling for. We're going to get into the semantics of how he calls for it, but do not lose focus of that. Do not fall for his rhetorical leftist trick of throwing in the word misogynistic don't fall for that and lose focus on what he's advocating for is the literal worst thing that human beings could possibly do to each other. And regardless of his merits on a lot of other subjects, that is completely unforgivable.
Now I know what you're saying to yourself. You're saying, Dane, David, that's not the worst thing humans can do to one another. Misrepresenting their gender, getting their pronouns wrong. These are the things that truly matter. But I'm here to say, jokes aside, it is the worst thing that can happen. But also, we don't know. Technology is pretty cool nowadays. This could have been a deep fake. They could have just used a bunch of different things.
That is true.
That made Jordan Peterson seem like a pro-war, pro-military kind of guy. Let's just get in there and fuck them up because they're doing things we don't agree with. Goddamn America.
That is a valid point. With the rise of deep fakes and shit like that, I will say that everything that I'm about to say in this segment in terms of going after Jordan Peterson is completely nullified if it later comes out that this was a deep fake and he says, hey, that wasn't me. I wouldn't advocate for that.
So here's the back door, Epstein. Epstein, Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
Whatever. He did say pushover. Now, that could mean a lot of different things. Could mean that we just put, trade restrictions. We could
Maybe you know what those are called?
tighten
Those are called sanctions.
Yeah.
You know what sanctions do? They starve people. They starve them of food.
Quietly.
They starve them of
We don't
medicine.
have to see him get blown apart.
I forget what the statistics are, but it's hundreds of thousands of children have died in Yemen
Well, you know
from
what, Dane?
what?
Maybe they should
From
fucking
what,
watch
David?
TGIF
From
Fridays.
bombs? No. Hundreds of thousands of children have been killed in Yemen because of cholera, because they don't have running water, because the United States is providing logistical support to the Saudis to bomb critical infrastructure that gives these people clean water.
Well,
you know what cholera makes you do?
don't vote for Biden.
Literally bleed out of both ends until you dehydrate and
I
die.
understand what cholera is. I died of it multiple times on the Oregon Trail. Okay? David died again from cholera.
So even sanctions.
It's just me in a green screen like this, like little pixelated green screen with shit coming out of both ends. Of course I know what cholera is, Dane. Don't act like I don't. I spent my time in Oregon Trail. All I'm saying is that he didn't necessarily call for violence.
Yeah.
Yes. Agree to disagree. But what I will say is, if he did, the old Batman quote, I got to throw in Batman whenever I can. If you murder a murderer, the number of murderers stays the same. So if you go and overthrow a totalitarian dictatorship, what does that make you? Kind of makes you a dictatorship, huh? Not just in your own country, but amongst the world. It says you have to agree to what I think that you should be doing at any given time, or else I'll show up. I'll just fucking eviscerate you. America. We love freedom, love our country, but if you disagree with us even in the slightest, we'll kill all of you. And not pleasantly either. So again, I'm hoping that this is a deep fake and it gets thrown out. And I'm hoping all he meant was come to the table and say, hey, knock it off, you guys, you little rascals. But if it's the way Dane sees it, it's pretty hard to defend him on this. And again, before I let the reins loose on the big fella over here, I will say that we're all human. We can all make mistakes. And when you put out enough content, as we've already seen, every now and again, you're going to fucking trip over your own shoelaces. That's all we're saying. In this one instance, he fucked up. Go ahead.
That is true. Despite what I've already said and despite what I'm getting ready to say, I want to pause for a second and say that this is also a teachable moment for us and everybody that listens and watches this podcast, is as opposed to what, leftists would do is, oh, this person said this one bad thing, let's throw the whole person away. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that I can vehemently disagree with somebody largely perceived and probably actually is on quote unquote my side, in the sense that, we agree on a lot of different things. Like I said, for me personally, this is the first time I've heard something from Jordan Peterson that I'm supremely disappointed in. But that doesn't mean that he no longer has anything of value to say about any other subject that isn't this. So that's what we're not going to do. But that doesn't mean that somebody on your side shouldn't be called out. Because again, if we let something like this pass, we're no better than everybody else engaging in Manichaeanism that we always call out on this podcast too. Just because he's largely on our team and up to this point has been for most of the time. And when I say our team, I mean, usually driven by logic and reason and seeing reality for what it is and all of that kind of stuff, not necessarily on our team ideologically. But for somebody that's largely on our team, this is highly disappointing, which is all the more reason to call it out. But I want to, with that being said, I want to go back in on him and say that, Jordan, I'm disappointed in you. I'm disappointed because in a very leftist way of crafting an argument, you use one of their favorite catchy buzzwords. Not bigot, not racist. This time it's misogynistic. This regime is misogynistic. Now, an objection to me criticizing him for this is a valid one. It would say, well, Dane, wouldn't you say, compared to Western democracies, Iran is rather misogynistic? I mean, they intentionally keep women at a lower state in society and they don't let them do things and they favor men over women and all that kind of stuff.
We should look into that.
And I would say... David's going full Andrew Tate over there, but...
No, I don't want to get arrested. I'm not involved in any sex trafficking or nothing.
I would say that yes, relatively speaking, in a vacuum, we can say objectively as a fact that on the spectrum of misogyny, that culture and society is more misogynistic than, say, a Western democracy. We can all agree with that. However, that's not why Jordan is using it. And the reason why I'm saying that with certainty that that's not the reason he's using it is because I've seen him argue before. He is very precise with the words he uses and the way he crafts his argument. So this is not an accident that he used this word. This is intentional in the same way that leftists use it. Now, why do leftists use these buzzwords? They use them as a proxy for moral high ground. They will make a claim unrelated to the buzzword, and they'll say, buzzword helped me get to my conclusion for why this thing is bad, why my claim is valid. In his case, why the United States needs to topple Iran's regime. Then you attach the buzzword, misogyny. And even if you don't explicitly state it, the subtle implication is, if you disagree with my conclusion that the United States should step in and topple Iran, then you are at least implicitly a little bit in favor of misogyny. And that's a red herring that shifts your focus away from what the ultimate conclusion is. And that's why I wanted to laser focus on what he's calling for is the worst thing that human beings can do to each other. Even if we grant the claim of misogyny and all that kind of stuff, that still would not justify wholesale carpet bombing an entire nation of people. Because not everybody partakes in that misogyny that he's saying is so terrible. And so, Jordan, listen, I would have a lot more respect for you if you came out with a utilitarian type argument and said, you know what? We know we're going to bomb innocent men, women, and children and probably starve several million more of them, but it's worth it. Because this misogyny is so bad that if we let this regime stay in power, the overall negative that's going to have an impact on the people of Iran, it'll be worse from that regime than from our bombs. Now, I would also disagree with that argument, but I would at least respect you because you at least kept it on point and you admitted that the thing you're asking for is wholesale destruction of the lives of millions of people. But that's not what you did you, Jordan? You threw out the word misogyny to make a boogeyman of this regime, and not to say that this regime has any merits or demerits, but that they're all saints and no demons. But you threw out that word for the same reason that leftists do it, this little rhetorical tactic to shift the focus away from what you're really arguing for, which is wholesale destruction of an entire society. And that's disgusting, Jordan. And not only is it disgusting, it's intellectually lazy for you to do that. It's intellectually lazy for the same reason that you call out leftists for doing it. So the fact that you would use their tactics to argue for what you argued for even makes me lose respect for you, the fact that you would do that. Again, on this topic, very specifically.
And again, lest we forget, they do have nuclear capabilities too, right? Because I think we tried to shut that down during the Obama administration.
They don't, but
they were working on it.
They're working on it for private uses of like having like nuclear factories. But it's a very big difference.
We could just nuke them. They wouldn't nuke us.
It's a very big difference to have nuclear
so let's go to war with
capable
them.
factories
let's just fuck them up.
and have that be fissile material
They're
that
not
you
going
can
to hurt
use
us.
in weapons.
I'm still going to be able to watch all my streaming services on Netflix and
for sure.
Hulu and HBO Max.
Right.
And then they'll just die over there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even have to see it. Right?
For sure.
Makes it totally fine.
Makes it a hell of a lot easier to palate. Yeah.
Tastes like a McDonald's McFlurry that never is in existence ever. So, have you satiated yourself on Epstein? I keep trying to fucking save Jordan. Jordan Peterson flesh. Are we? Have you got your pound?
I think so. Jordan, do better. At the very minimum.
Hey,
very minimum, keep your argument as tight as you always do and stay logically consistent and be honest. Don't be disingenuous with trying to throw out, leftist buzzwords.
Can I go good cop for a second? Jordan, we know you're a good guy. 98% of what you've said over the years, we'd agree with wholesale. You just missed the mark. Just, one time. Just not going to hold it against you. Just do better next time.
There's always the opportunity to apologize and take it back.
Unless it's a deep fake. And then we can still
say that.
And we still love you. You know what? You're human. None of us are perfect. On to the main, Brother Maynard. Apparently, curing blindness makes you an antichrist.
Which is rather strange because I'm pretty sure the real Jesus Christ did that.
Yeah, Jesus cured the blind, the lame, and the dumb. But God, thank Christ he didn't tweet it because Lord knows who's this Jesus fellow that's dying for my sins? I want to die for my own sins, all right? I'm American, God damn it. I'm not some commie that lets you just wipe out everyone else's fucking sins. I want to pay for my own sins, my own hard-earned soul money or whatever the bullshit is. Jesus would have had a hell of a time on Twitter, let alone YouTube. He would have been...
Probably wouldn't have done it because he also had this other thing about I'm
not familiar with the guy, so
something to the effect of don't make your sacrifices super obvious, right? Because you're either going to get worshipped by your fellow man on earth, or you're going to get by your Father in heaven.
If you're fasting, fast in private. If you're in suffering, suffer in private. Don't espouse.
Pretty sure Jesus would not have had a Twitter.
I feel like 18 years of fucking Catholic schools coming back in waves right now. Yeah. Anywho.
So anyway, what we have this week, and actually it didn't happen this week. It happened, I think, a week ago, end of January 2023. MrBeast, and I always forget his real name, but he is literally the biggest account on YouTube. I don't remember how many million subscribers, but let's just say a lot. And he often does these challenges because he makes a lot of money, both from his YouTube and other social media platforms. So he has the financial resources to do all kinds of crazy things. Like sometimes he'll have somebody stay in a house out in the middle of nowhere. If only we had mentioned
another character that has all the financial resources ever on this podcast alone that could have done this at any given whim.
Yes.
If only.
He'll do crazy things like get somebody to stay in a house out in the middle of nowhere for like 300 days and then he'll give them $500,000. He does crazy stuff like that. But then he also does some heartwarming stuff every now and then. And what he did recently is he found 1,000 people that had curable blindness. With a simple medical procedure, they would be able to see again. They are technically legally blind now, but he had the financial resources to pay for 1,000 people to be able to see again. 1,000 people. Now, before we go any further, I want to put a pin on that, and I want to ask you a simple question. How many people do you think the tweet or the commenters that had something to say about this that we're getting ready to read, how many people you think they've helped? Forget blindness. How many people you think they actually like threw a $5 bill out to the guy begging at a stoplight? You think these people did any of that?
I don't give a shit about that. Like, how is this not a complete and utter W?
Yeah.
Like a dude of his own volition saw that there were people in need, had the means to go and help them, and he did it. That's the cut and dried analogy here. That's all that happened. And from people in need, a good Samaritan comes along and offers them the services that they require with no repayment expected, by the way. He does it out of the goodness of his heart. Dane, how could this not just be received as like he's an angel?
Well, what they'll say, right? Devil's advocate.
Uh-oh.
What they'll say is, well, okay, well, he should have done it private. Like he shouldn't have done it for the clout on social media. Well, first of all, say that to the people who had their fucking blindness cured.
If you're good at something, never do it for free.
You know,
second Batman quote or thing in here.
tell these people that are finally able to see again, thanks to MrBeast, that it's somehow tainted or there's somehow something wrong because he made a YouTube video out of it. That's the first thing. Second of all, I get that maybe this is your first ever exposure to him, but like I just briefly laid out for a second, this is his whole channel. This is how he became the biggest channel on all of YouTube, is by doing some of these crazy stunts. Some of them crazy, some of them really nice like this, and all things in between. This is the content that he creates. So it's not like he had this one thing and then he's like, ooh, I want to go build up a whole bunch of positive social capital. So for the first time ever, I'm going to go do something nice and get a bunch of clout for it. That's not why he did it. That's his entire channel. So again, you chastising him for doing this not only misses the whole point that 1,000 people can now see who previously couldn't, but that you are really splitting hairs really fucking fine if you're trying to find some fault instead of just sitting back and going, damn, that's really cool. I don't even really care that he's getting popular off of, more popular than he already was. That's really cool. I hope he does it for another 1,000 people. That's the rational, non-piece of shits type of response.
Well, you know what that is, Dane?
But we know some of you don't have the non-piece of shit type qualities in you.
That leads me perfectly into my next statement, is that some people are just so ugly that they have to find something ugly in other people. And if there is truly something altruistic that somebody does, they have to they can't possibly digest the fact that somebody did something out of their own good because they think that everyone's like them, just fucking cynical and the whole world's out to get them, and the only reason anybody ever does anything good is because they can. Mother Teresa would have a fucking shit show on social media. They'd see her walking amongst lepers in her community. They'd be like, yeah, well, her tits are saggy. She needs moisturizer. Her face is all fucked up. She's not hot. I give her a 4 out of 10. Like, you fucking people, like, be better. Like, be the... What's that Bruce Almighty quote? Be the miracle, or be your own miracle, or be the miracle you want to see, or whatever that.
Yeah, be the change you want to see in the world.
Exactly is the basically what they're getting after. So go ahead.
Okay. No, I was just going to say that's why it wasn't a thought experiment for me to say that these people that we're getting ready to read their tweets from, do you think they've ever so much as given a dime to somebody begging on the street corner? Fuck no, because like David just said, they're projecting onto him, how dare he do this? Because when they're given the opportunity to give even a dime, they won't do it. Because they are the pieces of shit that they want to find in him. So, screw them. But anyway.
Hey, we can't help you be less of an asshole.
Yeah.
That's a trial for your own self.
That's on you, bro.
Yeah.
You gotta literally be the change.
Listen,
that you want to see in the world.
We're assholes in our own way. We probably let it be known on this podcast more than once or twice. And we're working through it too. But you know what we're not going to hate on? People fucking curing other people's blindness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, oh, that guy was hungry and you gave him a loaf of bread and he ate that day? What a piece of shit. Oh, you paid somebody's heating bill out of the goodness of your own heart? Well, you're a fucking... Whose cock did you suck today? Like, no. Just Jesus Christ, Grinch. It's not 365 days a year, all right? Let it down. In fact, instead of shitting on him, maybe you should take some onus upon yourself and be like, why don't I do that more often? Maybe not to the tune of 1,000 people being cured of blindness, but just like Dane said, hold a door for somebody. Start small. Like, don't like rush in front of the other person that's trying to get in line. Like, just be better as a human, and eventually one step leads to another, and then maybe someday you can buy 1,000 people blindness and some other asshole on the internet can call you a fucking piece of shit.
Yeah.
That's what you get to look forward to.
So let's get to a couple of these tweets, and we'll have our commentary on a couple of them as we go through here. But so the first one, and we're gonna put these tweets up. Well, first of all, they'll be here. Nameless Faceless Video Guy will put them in. But also,
does he put them here, or does he put them like here? I'd like to do like the Vandal
somewhere around there.
Is it
to the extent that we can find links to these tweets? They'll also be in the show notes page. So
just put them over my face.
The first tweet, quote, "There is something so demonic about this, and I can't even articulate what it is." Yeah, because when I think of 1,000 people being able to see, I think of demonic.
Yeah, right. Thanks, Satan.
Next tweet.
Here I was thinking Satan was all about like, causing dismay and making you doubt the fact that God exists. But apparently it's curing blindness and making people enjoy their lives a little bit better. Yeah, fuck you, right?
In a similar vein, the next commenter, the next tweet is, MrBeast being the Antichrist was not on my 2023 bingo card. Next
but
one.
Here's the thing, like evidence. Can you give one fucking reason why he's the Antichrist? Or just, oh, well, didn't know the fucking Antichrist was here already. Jesus. Like, nothing. There's not one instance where he was, other than him curing blindness in 1,000 people.
Yeah.
Shit, watch out, guys.
Next one. And again, like, look at the reach of some of these tweets, right? This next one I'm getting ready to read has 204 retweets, 16 quote tweets, and 5,630 likes. I hope these are all
trolls. I hope these are all trolls and they're just making a comment just for a laugh and people know that they're being satirical.
5,000 people saw this pure dipshittery and thought, I like that. That's really saying something.
Like it.
Anyway, here's what that tweet says. Quote, I am willing to concede that based on biblical evidence, MrBeast does check every box for being the Antichrist. But I'm also not willing to give that to him because there is no way the Antichrist is a soy-facing dweeb.
You're right. The Antichrist fucks. He's fucking lit. He's fucking in the gym, juiced out of his mind with a body that only the fucking Liver King can fucking replicate. Like, whenever you say the Bible, like, okay, I'm done. All right, I'm done. Show me. John 2:16 said fucking, and lo, there was a demon that rose from the sea and then cured blindness from 1,000 people.
Well, easy there, David. This Twitter account is called Fairy Godmother MD. So let's just give it the benefit of the doubt and say that this is an actual medical doctor behind this tweet. My guess is that this person who's the biblical evidence is probably not a big fan of the Bible anyway, in which case doesn't know fucking dick about it and heard like one verse quoted from it and was like, oh, that means that God wanted you to, stone your wife if she cheated on you. These are the kind of people that always have critiques of the Bible.
You can get MDs and other things, right, Dan?
MD is a medical degree, David.
Yeah, in fucking pacifism.
Next tweet. I don't have the reactions or the impressions on this one, but I'm sure this one's fantastic. Quote, We don't hate MrBeast. We hate the fact that we live in a society that has weight on, okay, it's Twitter, so I'm not going to butcher him over his grammar, but that has weight on the kind benevolence of a billionaire to allow people to receive life-changing medical care that should just be taken care of through universal health care.
Well,
guess
there
what?
it is.
Guess what? Very appropriately named Goofy Wise. The government takes in roughly, United States government by itself. Let's set all of those other ones aside just for a moment. The United States government takes in $4 trillion a year in taxes. You mean to tell me that I don't know how much MrBeast has. He's probably worth a couple $100 million, maybe. Maybe that's high. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Let's say he's a billionaire. Let's give the guy the benefit of the doubt. He's got $1 billion. The United States government brings in $4 trillion a year. And despite all your wishing in one hand and shitting in the other, guess which one fills up first, Goofy Wise? The United States government is somehow finding a way to not shave off a little sliver of that $4 trillion and actually cure people of blindness. You fucking moron. So, yeah, you can go ahead and keep wishing for your utopia if all of your policies were instituted, or you can live in fucking reality and you can celebrate somebody who's picking up the slack that the government, with your universal health care, is not actually doing. Because even if you say, oh, well, yeah, that's because the United States doesn't have universal health care, and that's the point I'm trying to make. Sweden does. All your Scandinavian utopias do. Canada does. The UK does. Spain does, France does, all these other countries have it. I don't hear any 1,000 people that are living in France and Canada and Sweden and Denmark and Spain. I don't see them getting 1,000 people cured of blindness. Do you? You heard that story? So even with universal health care, they're still not doing it. Well, you fucking dumb shit.
Hey.
Jesus, I just can't with these people that are just so stupid.
We are open to the public.
Not for this guy.
Maybe
this guy is dumber than a box of rocks.
Changes his ways.
No,
he can be accepted.
Listen, God forgives.
There's always a way back. There's always a way back. All I'm saying
but goddamn,
they make $4 trillion a year.
This level of stupidity
is beyond me. They make $4 trillion a year. I'm doing a callback, Dane.
And spend 7 as of the last year.
131. What did we just discuss? The Democrats trying to get rid of the debt ceiling. Correct.
Yeah. Sorry.
So what does that mean? What does that? I see that.
I'm trying to.
So what does that mean, Dane? That they're not trying to bring it down. How many trillions are we in debt?
Lots. 31.
All of them. We're all 31 trillion and rising each day. So it feels like they aren't really concerned with that. I feel like they're as concerned with the debt growing and rising each year and them not having 2 fucks to give. I think those 2 fucks to not give are 4 fucks to not give for the 1,000 blind people that really needed their help, and they could give a fuck because they were too busy with other very, very, very important things, I'm sure. Telling us what we can and can't do with our bodies, telling us what we can and can't do with our lives, telling us what we can and can't do with our own money that they're going to take from us at the end of the year. All that being said, you want to trust the government to be as altruistic as an individual member of society to help 1,000 people out. He helped 1,000 people out, and the government did what exactly this year?
Bombed a lot of poor kids. Jordan Peterson would be happy about.
Well, hey! That was below the belt. Try to keep the gloves up. Jesus Christ. It's hard. It's a hard lift.
Listen, here's the reason why I get so mad at statements like that. Is I've said this many, many times before. I do not consider myself a particularly intelligent individual, right? I'm not like, Einstein level IQ or anything else like that. Most of us are right here in the middle, the bell curve, right? Average intelligence, yada, yada, yada. But just with a very minimal level of common sense and understanding of history and seeing how the more you do things and yet they stay the same, that it's the pure definition of insanity to keep trying to do that same thing and expect different results, is because I'm not supremely intelligent, but can still see how dumb it would be to continue to give the individuals in government more money and more power, more control over resources to get these things done that you think that only they can do. And then to top that little cake with the cherry of being upset that somebody that did have the financial resources to do it actually did it. This is the same point we made about Elon Musk when they were, going nuts because he didn't solve world hunger, when he's one man and you literally have all of the governments on earth not solving it, and you're mad at the one guy.
And then, by the way, what he did he said, give me a plan. He wanted the government to give him a plan. Right.
But without,
and they never did.
Without going, too far down that tangent, it's the same thing. The reason why it makes me so angry is because I'm not some brilliant genius who had some novel insight that the average person doesn't understand for why I hold the position that it's completely stupid to expect the government to do this. It's because I'm of average intelligence and have figured that out. So the fact that you are so obtuse to be able to come to that conclusion, despite the fact it being literally an IQ of 100, right at the mean, and you can't figure that out, is either tells me that you are supremely stupid, which, again, not going to assume that about you, but you are so naive and so intentionally ignorant and refuse to learn anything from your own lived experience, forget history, that you would still hold on to this viewpoint and get mad at somebody for doing some good in the world. It's just, it blows my mind in addition to my gaskets. And that's why I lose my shit.
Well, again, we live in a very binary thinking country in a very gray-scaled world. Things are either good or they're bad. You either have money or you don't. You're either Democratic or evil. You're either Republican or you're evil. You're either a Christian or you're the devil, or you're either Jewish or you're out to get us. Like, there's no grayscale here. And then that's where that baseline, like, low energy thinking comes from. You have a lot of money. You could solve world hunger. Like, world hunger is a fucking complex issue. Like, society is a complex issue. Politics are a complex issue. Government and how it's run is a complex issue. It doesn't just have, we need to turn it on or turn it off. Like, again, we say this all the time. It comes down to personal accountability. It's on you to become educated. It's on you to know what the fuck you're talking about in any given situation. And you know what is also okay to do? Say you don't know. It's okay to not know. You're busy. You don't pay attention to this. You don't pay attention to that. That's cool. But don't just take somebody else's opinion and throw it up out of your mouth at the fucking water cooler because you think that it's going to earn you some popularity points. The popularity points you earn today are going to turn on you down the road. Same thing, which is why it brings me back to MrBeast. That turning down the road is when you go on Twitter and your little echo group, your echo chamber group, thinks that it would be cool to find something wrong with him curing blindness in 1,000 people, which is why you put that tweet out in the first place, because you thought that you and your team get it. You guys get it, right? You get it because we get it. There's nothing to get here. He helped a bunch of people out. Did he make content? Should he be rewarded for doing so? Yes. I have no problem with him making a profit off of him doing something profitable. Isn't that the whole fucking point of this whole world, is that you get rewarded for the things that you do well or do good? Like,
shouldn't we want more resources to flow to the individual or institution that's actually creating good outcomes?
If you want to record yourself giving a $1 million check to a poor, impoverished person, do it. Because you just changed 2 lives. You're going to get a bunch of support on your YouTube channel. And that guy he just was taken off the street and put into a bracket where he's never have to worry about anything again unless he fucks it up, which, hey, whatever. But the whole point being is like a good act is a good act. And I feel like we get so entrenched into everything that we do nowadays and in our own little foxholes that if anything steps outside of what we view as normal or acceptable, we have to attack it immediately. Even something as clandestine and as obviously altruistic as curing blindness in 1,000 people. I'm beside myself.
And here's just the craziest thing about this type of viewpoint, right? We want to all live in a world where the people that are creating good results are getting access to more resources. Because by creating good results in the first place, right, they have demonstrated their value not only to those immediately around them, but to society overall, that they can be trusted with the proper management of those resources, right? That's the whole purpose of why people voluntarily, as we say, vote with their dollars. If somebody creates a good or service that you really love and makes your life better, you're going to go and give them more money so that they can, again, use those new resources to make your life even better, right? That's how a normal functioning society of voluntary exchange works, right? And we point out all the time the incentives are wrong with government because everything is completely backwards. As opposed to getting rewarded with more resources for creating good outcomes, they're actually rewarded with more resources for creating bad outcomes. Case in point, exactly what you're talking about. You say government with $4 trillion of revenue every year is not creating the good outcome of curing people of blindness. So what's our solution? We give them more resources to go ahead and not cure blindness. Do you see how fucking stupid that is? You see how the individual who got money voluntarily by creating a YouTube channel that a lot of people watch and enjoy used a small portion of those resources to go help individuals and, oh my God, light your hair on fire because he used the attention that he got from that video to accumulate more resources to maybe in the future go and help even more people. That's the worst thing in the world. And instead of that, we want to make sure that the thing that has almost all of the resources and can legally steal it from us is the only institution in society that can do that.
Dane.
That's the thing that we want to have more resources, despite the fact a long demonstrated history of not doing good things for the world.
He literally...
Do you people listen to yourselves? I mean, the answer is no, but
he literally
figured I'd ask.
He literally monetized helping people.
Yeah.
That's literally what, like, if there was ever an altruistic business model, it would be that. It would be you get paid to help other people in their lives irrevocably.
Yep.
You just, you're JesusChrist.com or .co.
Well, you're the closest thing to that a human being can do, right? Because Jesus Christ cured the blind with miracles, right? He didn't need resources to do it because he had the power himself. Again,
so says the good book.
If you are in the Judeo-Christian tradition and, Jesus is, the Son of God and he cured people and all that kind of stuff, right? So he didn't need resources because as God, he could do it himself. Well, unfortunately for you and us and everybody else, human beings don't have that power. So the next best thing they can do is demonstrate their value to their fellow man such that their fellow man voluntarily gives them some of their own resources. And if they get enough of their fellow man to do that, that can accumulate to very large sums. And they say, okay, I've demonstrated my value to all you people. Thank you for the money. I'm gonna demonstrate my value again. And I'm gonna use these resources that you entrusted to me to go help people. Oh, the fact that I published that makes you want to give me even more resources? Thank you. I'm going to go help some more people. And that's the feedback cycle of how human beings that don't have the capacity for miracles themselves can use the generosity of other human beings and magnify that and create which would otherwise be a literal miracle. Because these people, these 1,000 people, would not have the ability to see if not for MrBeast using that business model to be able to pay for them to do it. He created an essential miracle through his imperfect, fallible way as a human being, the only way he can do that. And that is a laudable thing to do. Good for him. Last tweet before we let the dipshits have the last word, and it's really just kind of a recapitulation of what Goofy Wise said, but just a little bit different. Municat says, and by the way, 172 retweets, 18 quotes, 5,348 likes. She had 142,000 people see this tweet. And yet we say something like taxation is theft and 5 people see it, if that. Whatever. I guess Twitter's algorithms aren't completely fixed. Elon, get on that. Anyway, Municat has this brilliant thing to say that 142,000 people saw and 5,000 people thought was really profound. Quote, most of the people who watch him are very young, and they will learn about altruistic acts like this as if they are normal. I just want to pause there before I get to the rest of that. And that would be bad because if a bunch of young people watch MrBeast and say, that's really cool that he did that thing, I'm going to go try to do that thing too. Is that the worst lesson that a kid could take away from a YouTube channel? They could take a hell of a lot worse away from this YouTube channel. They'll learn bad words from us. Anyway, rest of her tweet. Quote, I feel
like that was a personal attack
on me. Into the quote. So they will learn about altruistic acts like as if they are normal. Like it's down to billionaires to fix these problems and not policy. So, I mean, she's saying the same thing as Goofy Cat. Policy would fix this. If we just got those wise public servants in government that definitely don't abuse their station repeatedly, blatantly in our faces, we're going to get those group of individuals to write some words on a piece of paper. And that's somehow magically going to create this thing we call policy. And that policy is going to manifest in people actually getting helped by this corrupt institution that's always used against us. Again, do you fucking people hear yourselves talk?
They have to be bots.
They have to be.
Or they're
what is the other
living
explanation?
NPCs. They're living NPCs. I think I've seen a couple of them this week. But Dane, if I may be so bold, can I introduce another?
You can have the last word.
Can I introduce another segment into the WMD podcast universe?
Go for it.
A WMD takeaway. It's very succinct.
I like it.
It's just be more MrBeast. Be less of a commenter. That's it. You want to be MrBeast because that makes the world better. Don't be the commenter sitting on the sidelines, not contributing to make the world better.
Yep.
That's it. That's all I had to say. Dane, where can they find this illustrious 132 episode?
You can find this episode at WPodcast.com/132. They can get it on any podcast catcher, the audio only. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. The video will be on YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey. Still got the vote out on whether or not was it Culture Corner?
Full video.
Whether Culture Corner is going to be blanked out on YouTube. I think we're good for it, but we'll see. You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook only as the members page. Join that email list, by the way, as well. You can also find us on Tribal and Float. And I should have said this at the beginning of the episode, but I'm going to say it now, and I hope that you're already here. And nameless, faceless video guy, feel free to clip this out and make a smaller one. This coming Wednesday, David, what's the date on this Wednesday? This coming
Don't have
Wednesday.
My phone. Can't tell you.
I know the it's February something rather. Anyway, what is today? The 3rd? See, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. Should be February 8th is Wednesday, I believe. David and I, your lovely co-host here, will be on the Whiskey Capitalist podcast. And they live stream on, I don't remember if it's every Monday, Wednesday, but this Wednesday they'll be live streaming with ourselves. It's also a 2-host podcast. David and I will be on it, and we'll be talking about current events, stuff like that. So please go to YouTube, subscribe now to the Whiskey Capitalist podcast so that you get the notification for when we are live on Wednesday. But also, 2 guys over there are good guys, and we expect to have a good, productive, entertaining conversation. So please go over there. This episode, we're trying to push our nameless, faceless video guy and our audio guy to get this out Tuesday instead of Wednesday. So hopefully this comes out before we're on that podcast on Wednesday. But please go over there, drop by.
If you're a member of the email list, you'll already get an email saying that we're going to be on it too.
Yep. And they, again, since it's a live stream, they have comments as they're talking throughout the episode. So jump in that comment, say, hey, I'm coming over here, weapons of meme destruction, got a question for you guys. Dane's sexy, David not so much. You know, all that stuff. But you can talk to us and the co-host from Whiskey Capitalists right there in the moment. Get your questions answered. Talk to us. Join the conversation. Join the larger sane space. So please check that out this coming Wednesday, February 8th. I want to say around 7 p.m., I think is when they start. But again, I'll give you more details before that. But with that being said, David, I think I'm done with my spiel.
Are you done with your spiel?
I'm done with my spiel.
Well, thanks for sticking around this long. And stay safe, guys. But more importantly, and as always, stay free.